presentation is titled Pandemic Opportunities, ICT Appropriation and Professional Development. And I'd like to welcome Valentina. And I probably will not pronounce the names right, but I'll give it my best try. Valentina Canese, Roberto Paez, and Jessica Amarilla, all from the University, the National de Asunción in Paraguay. So welcome, and the clock starts now.
Well, good evening, everyone. I know it's different times, afternoon probably in Hawaii. I'm here in Spain right now, so it's in the middle of the night. So I will start sharing my screen. Let me see. I think you can see me now in the presentation. And well, as Colleen just said, the title of our presentation is Pandemic Opportunities, ICT Appropriation and Professional Development. This is part of a study we've been working on, funded by the Paraguayan main funding agency, Canese, and we are from the National University of Asunción. And well, it kind of became very current again because of all the issues that have arisen in the last few weeks, again with the Omicron variant and many places being closed. I have a family problem with traveling, and so it's really, the pandemic brought a huge challenge to educational institutions, especially in countries like Paraguay, where infrastructure is very poor, and most especially in the rural areas. So this study was proposed before the pandemic, and for after the pandemic disrupted not only the educational context, our study also had to be adapted because of this situation. And so we had to adapt the study. Our study was on ICT use in secondary education, and we had to adapt it to the pandemic context. So that's what the main problem of presented in this presentation has to do with how teachers appropriated the technology used during the pandemic, and what kinds of opportunities teachers were able to garner from this situation. So the purpose of this presentation is to analyze or to describe how secondary teachers in Paraguay, like teachers around the world, were forced to adopt ICT as a way to meet the educational needs of their students, and how this forced adoption became an opportunity for professional development and teacher innovation. So even though this was a very stressful situation in all over the world, not just in our country, many teachers' perspective were positive in terms of the kinds of opportunities they had in terms of professional development. And that's what we would like to highlight in this presentation. And the overall framework of the study was a nested qual-quan mixed methods design, in which we used focus group interviews with classroom teachers and a survey questionnaire that was adapted for the purpose of the study. We had to adapt a questionnaire that we had already got permission to use for the pandemic context, and we used a stratified probabilistic sample of all secondary schools in the country for the survey, and we used purposeful sampling for the focus group interviews. And so I will be concentrating on some of the descriptive results in the quantitative survey, and also the qualitative analysis of the focus group interviews. We first conducted a pilot study with exploratory focus group interviews, pilot use of the survey. Once we adopted the survey, then we used it on the stratified probabilistic sample of all teachers, and first of all, some of the results indicate that there was little or no training, professional development in the use of ICT prior to the pandemic. And once the pandemic hit, the Ministry of Education in Paraguay initiated virtual training on the use of ICT as a contingency measure in the face of the pandemic. So there was massive adoption of different types of technologies to mitigate the effects of having to close all schools. And depending on the country's region, the different strategies were used. So teachers had to learn in record time about virtual platforms and adaptations of distance education, and sometimes access training through self adopt or self-management, or let's say on their own, creating communities of practice of teachers teaching each other and collaboration among colleagues. The training sessions and the professional development organized by the ministry included the use of the Microsoft Teams platform, which was adopted by the Ministry of Education. Other things like emotional intelligence, and platform created by the Ministry of Education for sharing resources with teachers and students and parents. And some of the professional development that the teachers did on their own included the use of the Zoom platform, Google Meet, Google Classroom, the use of Microsoft Office tools, and other types of different tools that they found useful for the contingency remote education. So we could see here from two of the questionnaires that before the pandemic started, in the first sample, teachers said that they had never had any ICT training time, and then during the quarantine, then they had increased that significantly, so professional development on ICT was really it was really noticeable. In terms of the qualitative analysis, many of the teachers noticed that they acquired some competence, and they say, well, they became competent forcefully, although not completely. For example, like in the first example, it says we cannot use it because we are not computer scientists, but we can give it, we can use it as a utility tool so that we can carry out our activities in the classrooms. So they're always, one of the things that they noticed that the courses were done at the national level, and that helped a lot. And much of it had to be self-taught, because when you say and always are aware that there are no courses, we don't have training courses on technologies, you do not need so much training courses if you have that predisposition, and if you want to be self-taught, then you can learn a lot. And then other teachers noticed, and I had to do something. So I think it's you learn by doing. You do as you go, and you always say that we have to make our own way to achieve what we need. So these are teachers from the countryside in Paraguay. Many of the tools used for instruction so one of the main problems presented by the pandemic was the scarcity of the resources. And so in the end, many teachers resorted to the use of text messaging, such as the use of WhatsApp as the main tool for communication and also for sending homework to their students. After 1 year of the pandemic, then more teachers used virtual platforms and other means of communication and classwork. But in general, especially in the rural areas, access to ICT was very limited. So that ended up being a problem. And the use of ICT was very limited. Some places they did not have enough internet to connect. They did not, even if they paid on their own from their own pockets, the signal, the connectivity was very low. So that was one of the things that really limited the issue of using ICT. So so here are some quotes of the teachers from the capital city, the metropolitan area, and the metropolitan area, where ICT was used more broadly than in the other area. So one teacher, for example, said, we have applied the use of ICT with students, either through cell phones or all possible means to reach them, and even more so what we teach, which is mathematics. So this is a math teacher, all possible means to be able to reach students, and even more so the one we have encountered many inconveniences. I'm talking about the fact that we don't have computers, that we do not have high-end telephones, and to be able to do that kind of work. And then we are left with WhatsApp, which is the one that everyone has, right? And then another teacher also mentioned, well, it depends on each teachers. There are teachers who record the class and send it by WhatsApp. Many times depends a lot on the class you are going to give. The use of ICT is positive. In my case, for example, if I am going to work on lines, graphs, equations and other things, it will be very useful to work with them on GeoGebra, and I have them downloaded that application so that we can work on it and we can learn how to use it. So these were sometimes the exceptions to the rules, but for the most part, many of the activities were carried out through these the means of WhatsApp. So finally, getting to the main aspect of this study, which is, well, there were many challenges presented to the teachers in regards to all aspects of virtual and remote learning, including access, resources, financial, uncertainty about the situation. Just like the news today or yesterday in the United States, there's a great uncertainty again with the Omicron variant and what's going to happen, and challenges about regarding the community, the skills and the attitudes of all of the community members, including teachers, parents, and students, and training and professional development was a big challenge because many teachers were not ready and are still not ready. Although going to the next column, and then one of the challenges that now, after 2 years of the pandemic, it's starting to show even more is the mental wear and tear, the mental, the emotional challenges that this type of situation presents to both teachers and students, the whole community. And some of the measures adopted was doing things according to each community's possibilities, adapting the curriculum, finding ways to get things like printed materials to remote areas where they did not have connectivity. And the opportunities mentioned by teachers included the opportunity to continue studying, to not stop the learning, the opportunity for getting training, for getting professional development, for learning other skills, and to implement improvements in terms of teaching using ICT. And of course, there's the opportunity for the Ministry of Education to invest in infrastructure, but most especially, they mention that the digital migration, or to rethink the entire system. What should be the focus of our educational system from now on? And so as teachers, what should we focus on? And what was interesting, from the first year of the pandemic to the second year of the pandemic, there was a shift in the perspectives presented by the teachers. So the first year, at the beginning, it was, okay, we don't know what's going to happen. This whole situation was looked at something very temporary. As the time went by, then things started to look more. Teachers had to look for new ways and better ways. The second year of the pandemic, hybrid learning was implemented. And so the question now remains. And so here are some examples of teachers' views on these challenges and these opportunities. So more than academics, the biggest challenge was to keep students motivated and also socialize in some way through the virtual classes. Keep the group of students interested and motivated by working cooperatively. Students had problem comprehending assigned tasks, a difficulty in reaching students. And then the opportunities, teachers saw opportunities, especially the adoption of most supportive role in the completion of homework. What they saw also as an opportunity was opportunity for the whole community to get involved, parents, and so there was a real involvement and a real thinking about education and how and then the opportunities are continuing to apply technologies even in face-to-face classes. Many teachers learn a lot of techniques and methodologies that we will continue to apply, this teacher mentioned. And that's, I think, one of the questions that remain after this 2 years of the pandemic is whether these adopted methodologies and adopted appropriation of technology in education, whether these strategies or this use will continue, will extend in time, and what will that look like? So for most of last year, many teachers worked in hybrid mode. Some in the more rural areas went back to face-to-face, and by the end of the year, they were saying that they were back to pre-pandemic conditions in terms of how things were done. So it did not really create like a long-lasting effect, which is something that most scholars around the world are now talking about and exploring. How can these appropriated strategies and ways of teaching have a more long-lasting effect, and how we can use more effectively in ways that brings us together other than separate us. So I was listening to an interview, and many students, especially secondary students, were talking about how stressful it was going back to remote learning. So as a conclusion, we found that although teachers indicated that they have average to expert levels of competence, they still have difficulty accessing ICT tools. The efforts made by teachers aim at achieving students' motivation and success. There were also pedagogical difficulties related to evaluation and the use of platforms. Teachers' views on professional development affect their training development, and the pandemic affected the use of ICT accelerating its implementation. And the different opinions. So a lot of these issues of the opportunities and professional development had to do with how supported teachers felt from their institutions. And so based on these results, recommendations include partnerships with the university to provide more in-depth professional development to ensure teacher appropriation and effective use of ICT tools. So we're working on new projects in which more engaging and more applied professional development can be done in order for teachers to actually feel that the use of ICT actually enhances their teaching and their students' learning. And with this, I would like to thank you all. Muchas gracias, Aguille, we say in Guarani. Thank you very much.